This afternoon's discussion on the film Insidious. Where would the group like to start? There are no wrong answers.
I guess we can start with our astral projecting kid.
Dalton?
Yeah.
All right, so what did you say? What caught your eye? All right, Dalton Lambert. And for purposes of this discussion, let's steer away from any sequels.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We'll keep focused on the original. And with full disclosure, too, that none of us in this room, including myself, are child psychiatrists. So, given all the above, what did you say?
Dalton ends up in a coma following what the parents thought originally was due to a fall that had happened prior. And there's no medical backing for why he's in a coma, and it's later discussed that it's because his astral projection is lingered too far from his physical body.
Mm-hmm. The way the movie starts out is consistent with the way our discussions always themselves start, and that is with the investigation into a potential physical cause, underlying medical condition, and there's a fall in this film. There is dialogue, there is script to suggest that the fall does not account for the behavior that is observed. So that is consistent with the APA, that is consistent with the DSM, whether we believe it or not, we'll see. But Dalton's behavior does not appear to be due to an underlying medical condition that may have resulted from that fall, even though it's, again, pretty discreetly set that way in the film. If not that, and that would assume that beyond head injury, other medical causes were investigated during the hospitalization. I think that's reasonable to assume, and nothing's perfect. What are some of the things we could begin thinking about? Here, can you just pull that towards me so we get the names out of the background? Yeah, that's great. Perfect. You mentioned the word coma. Coma is actually in the script. What is coma?
Isn't it just a depressed function of your brain? It's not vegetative. It's it's controlled depression of your brain function.
Right. It's a form of unconsciousness, right? And this we probably need. Anybody here going into neurology? An altered state of consciousness is fair, right? Usually altered states of consciousness differentiate from unconscious in terms of continuum, but there's also a gray overlap too. So I'm not going to ding anybody for saying one versus the other here. Altered state of consciousness, unconsciousness. One example of an unconscious state is coma. Right? That's, of course, an abnormal example, or an example of an abnormality. Can somebody give me an example of a normal unconscious state? Yeah. I think the two easiest examples, right? Sleeping and coma. So if Dalton, I assume he's not sleeping, although maybe I should make that assumption, but if he's unconscious and it's not coma, what else could it be? Sleeping's one of them. What if he gets an EEG, continuous EEG monitoring, and it shows that he's going through stages that are consistent with sleep? Well, that's another concern. That's not sleep, right? But what would rule in for sleep? And if he does rule in for sleep, then what? What's our differential? But first things first, how would he rule in that this prolonged unconscious state is due to hypersomnia? what would the EEG look like? And the hint is, it wouldn't look like status epilepticus. Right? You're not going to get those.
I guess it depends on the stage. Or
Well, how long is he unconscious in this movie? Yeah, so it's more than one 24-hour cycle. So what are you going to say?
what, like REM state?
Yeah, right. So you'll definitely get a bout of REM, or plural bouts of REM, that are going to alternate with episodes of non-REM, right? Can someone give me examples of episodes of non-REM?
Is that just like the N1, N2, N3 cycles?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they don't know what you mean.
Like the different stages of like light sleep, deep sleep, and then it goes from there.
Right? You guys have to correct me on this because it's been a while, but are stages 3 and 4 still approached and taught as different? Or did they?
I only have 3.
It's like
They're known as the
awake,
one.
REM, N1, N2, and N3.
Okay, so stage
Light
3.
Sleep is like, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me something about stage 1 sleep.
Stage 4 as well.
Stage 1, I think you're just like you're awake but your eyes are closed kind of thing.
Mhm.
And then stage 2 you're in a light sleep, and then stage 3 you're in your deep sleep, which is when like I believe like sleepwalking and like sleep terrors can occur. So it's like why are they? And then from there, if your brain waves slowly change, then REM they like spark back up like if you were awake.
For purposes of your shelf exam, what are some things that might be included in a case vignette that would result in your choosing stage 1 sleep as a single best answer?
If they still have like control, like they can move.
Okay. I don't know if that differentiates from stage 2.
That's fair. They're still conscious. No?
Like alpha waves in the brain?
Alpha or theta,
Yeah.
right? So those are the 2 waves you want to look at. Those are the more rapid waves. They're not beta. Everybody here should be beta, hopefully. If you're starting to tune me out, it's alpha. Theta waves are going to buy you stage 1 sleep, right? I don't think they're going to require you to actually look at the cycles per second or hertz. The word theta should be there, and that'll buy you the diagnosis. Now, when someone is enduring theta waves when they're in stage 1 sleep, if it happened to you right now, what might happen? Other than your course director getting pissy. You're going to fly out of your chair. You never saw Classmate? Or,
Doze off.
right? Yeah. On shelf exams, it's referred to as hypnotic jerk, right? It's when you wake yourself up in a startle, right? The classmate in front of you, and everybody laughs at them. The hypnotic jerk. Stage 1 sleep, theta, all right? Stage 2 sleep. There's 2 things. And this has been shown on EEGs on exams.
Is this like the sleep spin?
Yeah.
And like is it K complex?
Yeah, good. Again, those are big words. Can you describe what the heck you just said?
Not really. I just know the buzzword.
I think the spindles are the condensed activity of, I believe, alpha. I could be wrong about that.
Yep.
Though.
And what do they actually hallmark? Microarousals, right? Which makes sense because you're in light sleep still, right? Microarousals, I mean arousal, right? I believe the K complexes are your brain's built-in mechanism to try to get you back to sleep, right? So it's the cortical recovery from the microarousal.
It's like the spikes of the proof of it moving to delta waves, like when it spikes like that. It's a K complex.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I always appreciate it. Kind of looks like an EKG finding. Not to get that mixed up, because you could look at the sleep spindle and K complex, or specifically the K complex, and think that it looks nothing like an EKG. So do not take my word for that. All right. Sleep spindle, K complexes, microarousals, followed by your brain's override to get you back to sleep, which may or may not work. Right. If it doesn't work, the stage 2 sleep decay complex can be followed by a run of beta, which is what you guys are doing right now, which means that you're up. Right? On the other hand, it could be followed by further sleep morphology, including the next stage, which would be stage 3, which would be the delta wave, right? Deep sleep. Evidence that Dalton is in non-REM. And insomnia may be a fictional case of a hypersomnolence disorder. There are multiple pathologies published in the DSM-5 under parasomnias and dysomnias that are characteristic of non-REM sleep. There are 2 examples of non-REM sleep arousal disorder. What are the 2 examples?
Is that night terrors and then sleepwalking?
Yeah. Are either in this movie?
No.
For night terrors, no. You'd think that it should be, but it's not. That's actually in Sinister, but not Insidious. There's no scene in which, in the middle of the night, Dalton is found sleepwalking?
Oh. I guess, kind of.
I thought there was.
There was.
Right?
Yes, there was.
So maybe this is a non-REM sleep arousal disorder. Doesn't really explain his hypersomnolence, though.
Oh, right, because then if you're in the 3rd stage, isn't that like the most restorative and like restful sleep?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's also one where you're very highly metabolically active, sex hormones. What's one condition we need to consider here when it comes to Dalton, perhaps his unconsciousness being explained by hypersomnolence disorder, which is published in the DSM, hypersomnolence disorder, with, let's say, co-occurring non-REM sleep arousal disorder, specifically sleepwalking. Again, shelf exam, what is the Klein-Levin syndrome? Klein-Levin is a neurologic disorder. Comes up on neuro exams and psych shelves, with alternating episodes of hypersomnolence and hyperphagia.
I was going to say narcolepsy, but that's not. No?
You have to look that up. I might be wrong. Narcolepsy doesn't come to mind. It's really hypersomnolence
Okay.
with hyperphagia. And I love the spaghetti scene at the end. Now, not that this kid wouldn't eat after, I could eat breakfast like that, just waking up after a night's sleep.
Is that night eating syndrome?
Huh?
Night eating syndrome?
It could go by a different name. I don't know. I have to look that one up. I'm not familiar with the name.
Okay. I was thinking about hyperphagia. Eating a lot, right? So
Yeah.
waking up in the middle of the night and eating.
No, so, that's something too. But Klein-Levin is like hypersomnolence, like sometimes measured in days to weeks.
Oh, okay.
It's Dalton. And they wake up and they ravage. It's also Pennywise, although a little bit more metaphorical.
Maybe atypical depression?
Why do you say that?
Because I know some patients have the hyperphagia compared to the regular where it's less appetite and hypersomnolence. But I'm not sure if it explains the sleepwalking.
No, it wouldn't. No, although that said, if someone has hypersomnolence due to major depressive disorder, specifically with atypical subtype, the longer you're asleep, the higher the risk that you're going to develop a sleep pathology. It's just it comes down to numbers, right? So I wouldn't be totally dismissive of the idea of major depression in general, atypical depression in particular, just because we see sleepwalking. I mean, if you're sleeping for 8 hours and you sleepwalk 1 in 1,000 times, okay. But if I triple or quadruple the time you're sleeping, I'm going to also increase the likelihood, right? So I wouldn't totally dismiss the idea that this might be an atypical depression. So let's talk about that. Now, again, I'm not going to get into atypical depression in children. Let's take this to the adult conversation and re-ask the question, what is Well, what are the different subtypes of major depressive disorder? So you diagnose depression, and the APA says that you can actually code for specific subtypes. There are, I think, 7. One is atypical. I'll start us off. Atypical. And we'll go through all of these in terms of what to look for to get the single best answer on a shelf exam.
Isn't there like mixed, or it could be like manic and depressive symptoms?
Yep. Yeah. And again, for shelf purposes, mixed is going to be your single best answer when the number of manic symptoms does not reach the threshold of 4. Because if it reaches the threshold of 4, you have a manic episode, which means you're bipolar. So you're not going to talk about subtypes of depression or major depressive disorder when the single best diagnosis is actually bipolar disorder. But fewer than that magic threshold of 4 doesn't buy you the diagnosis of mania, and therefore does not buy you the diagnosis of bipolar. So in the setting of a major depressive episode, co-occurring manic symptoms falling below the threshold of 4 number gives you mixed. Make sense?
Yeah, anything below 4.
Yeah.
Don't you also have major depression with like psychotic features, like you can have like hallucination?
3.
No, yeah. Is postpartum depression on as well?
It is not. That's more of an onset specifier, not a subtype. So there's different types of specifiers. We're talking about subtypes. That's an onset specifier.
What about like PMDD, or is that a different type as well?
That's a completely different
Okay.
disorder, albeit in the same chapter
Okay.
of depressive disorders, premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Which, by the way, only for the blue team, since we discussed this morning, the idea of delirium being a misnomer. It's not a mental disorder because it's literally due to an underlying medical condition, which is the exact opposite of every other mental disorder published in the DSM, where you have to investigate and rule out that there's a general medical condition. So too is PMDD, because it's dysphoria that is the direct result of an underlying condition, which is a surge in progesterone. So it's another misnomer, and at some point it's going to be put probably in an appendix in the DSM along with delirium. That, by the way, it's just speculation. I don't know. I don't have any inside information on that.
What about like, is it dysthymic and cyclo? No.
Now,
Okay.
dysthymic disorder or persisting depressive disorder is yet another. You're listing all the depressive disorders in the chapter. Catatonic subtype. Catatonic subtype. Anxious distress. Melancholic subtype.
What's that one?
Melancholic subtype, if you look at the actual signs and symptoms, they're really the same as a major depressive episode. It's just that there's a preponderance of symptoms in the morning that tend to improve throughout the day. So significant difficulty getting out of bed. That kind of hallmarks the insomnia, difficulty getting out of bed, with difficulty concentrating, and other signs of depression, SIGI caps, that are really constellated to the morning hours. Gives you melancholic depression. The other thing about melancholy or melancholic depression is that, if you remember, if you're diagnosing major depressive disorder, you can have either depressed mood or loss of interest, anhedonia. You could have both, but you need just one. For melancholic depression, you do need anhedonia. It's anhedonia over depressed mood. So otherwise, the signs and symptoms conform to SIGI caps. So the same signs and symptoms. But there's a focus on the anhedonia, and there's also a focus on the symptoms constellating in the morning. It's melancholic depression. The last one is seasonal pattern, otherwise known as seasonal affective disorder by the ICD-10 classification, seasonal pattern. And the acronym spells CAMPS, C-A-M-P-S. Right? There are 2 A's, atypical and anxious distress. There are 2 M's, mixed type and melancholy.
That last one more time.
Melancholy?
No. In atypical mixed psychotic features, catatonic, anxious distress, melancholic, and
Seasonal
Seasonal.
pattern? Yeah, CAMPS, C-A-M-P-S. One final thought on melancholic depression. Anybody here see the movie Melancholia? One of the best depictions of melancholy and melancholic subtype in Hollywood. And I thought a great movie just as a standalone. So I think we're having an eclipse in March. It's really not an eclipse movie per se, but if you watch the movie, you'll get exactly what I mean. Do not Wikipedia this. Do not look it up. No spoilers. No pre.
March 3rd.
3rd, okay. March 3rd. There's at least one scene that also allows for discussion of co-occurring, and we'll get to this topic next, atypical depression. What is atypical depression? Which is where we started. So let's end with this. What's atypical depression? So the subtype of atypical depression, and for all of these, for any time we're discussing subtype, the person must meet criteria for a major depressive episode. So that goes without saying. In addition to SIGI caps, the individual struggling with atypical depression as a subtype has mood reactivity. Right? That's going to be a hallmark sign, cardinal feature, mood reactivity. That is, they're highly reactive to circumstance. And then after that, you need two of the following. There is a condition called leaden paralysis, which is this subjective sense that your arms or legs are weighted down, leaden paralysis. There's increase in sleep or hypersomnia. There's an increase in appetite, so they go in the opposite direction that is usual when it comes to sleep and appetite. And there's also a condition called rejection sensitivity, which is exactly what it sounds like. So any two of that four, along with the mood reactivity, provide the diagnosis of atypical depression. And there's a incredible scene in Melancholia, even though it's really about melancholic depression, that I think is a very artistic depiction of leaden paralysis.
L-E-D-E-N.
Leaden, yeah. Any other thoughts on Dalton Lambert? What other characters in Insidious would you like to discuss this afternoon?
Josh, when he enters the state of altered consciousness, and he's walking around in his astral projection, the world around him was similar to the tangible form, but kind of different. Reminded me kind of
The further.
some sort of derealization, almost out of touch with the external environment.
Yeah, so the end of this movie does an incredible job of wrapping up the chapter of dissociative disorders in the DSM. It starts off just seconds before he enters the further. How does he get into the further at the end of this movie?
It's the metronome, and Elise is verbally guiding him into it.
Right.
Yeah.
So through hypnosis, he's able to reach that altered state of consciousness, which is exactly what we've been talking about. Now, I don't know who came in, snuck in that house to hypnotize his son. We could conspiracy theory that to death. But for Josh, the last 15 or so minutes of this movie, he has an induced state that results in this altered state of consciousness. And it starts out with his telling Elise that it didn't work, and then seeing himself sitting in that chair. So even before he gets to the further, he has a period of depersonalization, then enters into a state of derealization, and then either or would have brought him to the diagnosis of depersonalization, derealization disorder. Right? But then he travels. Right? Then he travels. The question I would have for Josh at this point is whether or not he remembers his time in the further. Because Dalton clearly doesn't. Matter of fact, they even say he doesn't as he's eating that spaghetti. Back to that spaghetti scene. Right? So it's reasonable to assume that Josh will also not remember his travel away into the further, which buys him a diagnosis of what? When somebody doesn't remember, and loss of memory, it cannot be attributed to normal forgetfulness.
Dissociative amnesia.
Yeah, right. And to the extent, again, largely symbolic, he's traveled. What's the specifier we might consider here?
Dissociative fugue.
Yeah, yeah. Astral projection to Elise is a fugue state to a psychiatrist, right? Matter of fact, in the beginning of the movie, when she discusses Dalton, this is the grandmother. No, this is Elise. This is Elise. She actually says, because she talks about astral projection, I don't know if it's Josh or his wife, ask, what did you call it? And she simply says, I like to call them travelers. She takes the T word right out of the DSM. That's fugue. Why can't we diagnose Josh with dissociative amnesia, with fugue? And I'll give you a hint. It's the same answer as to why we can't diagnose him with depersonalization, derealization disorder.
Because it was induced.
Does it cause him distress or like impairment?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
And by the way, that is the sequel. Although he offs Elise before the sequel, so he even, yeah, there's clinically significant impairment in interpersonal functioning. He doesn't interpersonally interact with Elise in a kind way.
but before that,
Yeah, no, I think both he and his son reached that criteria.
There's like a presence of an altar, essentially,
Yeah.
at the end.
Yeah, so what's his final diagnosis?
DID.
Yeah, I mean, with DID, you're going to have amnesia, so you can't diagnose dissociative amnesia and DID. It's DID. And similarly with DID and dissociative amnesia, by the way, you're going to have periods of depersonalization and derealization, so you don't diagnose that either. All of it's wrapped up in DID. And that's where I would then refer you at this point to watch the sequel. It's one of the most underrated sequels ever made. Yeah. Final thoughts on Josh. Other characters to discuss.
I mean, Elise has this belief that she's able to, like, I guess, see to the other side, essentially, if she's seen ghosts. And yeah, she has this belief that she's able to like, communicate with them to remediate some sort of distress with the physical world.
Yeah. Differential diagnosis here is varied. We can go from a starting point of completely normal and culturally sanctioned to complete malingering and being a con artist. And then the psychiatry should fall in between. So let's assume, for the sake of teaching, that we're going to move off that initial starting point of unconditional positive regard and reassurance that this is normal behavior. We're also going to, though, maintain our positive regard and not suggest that she's lying or is in the other way a con artist. So if we discover upon further investigation that there is clinically significant distress or impairment in Elise's functioning, what are some things we should consider? Yeah, I think I would start off with one of the cluster A personalities. Her devout belief that results in clinical distress. The conversation starts with schizotypal personality, which does pose risk of developing schizophrenia.
right? Like she doesn't have like the typical, like she has like hallucinations and delusions, which I believe doesn't like typically doesn't veer that far.
Correct. Yeah, and fortunately on a shelf exam, you're either going to get black or white, and you're going to pick from A, B, C, or D. In real life, unfortunately, it doesn't happen like that. There's a progression too, and there's an overlap of where you'll get a report that they did blank, which would suggest a delusion.
Yeah,
Or-
or they're dressed they always like mention how they're dressed for schizotypal. Like they're always like
Hmm?
oddly dressed.
The bizarre behavior comes in multiple forms. Yeah, thoughts, attire. Yeah, yeah. And then the onset of the psychosis again isn't a stop date. It's a slow progression where clinically you're thinking, well, which one is it, one or the other, and you're usually in that transition, which can again take several months. It's not that easy in terms of poses risk and boom, there's the first break psychotic episode. Now it's schizophrenia. In real life, it doesn't happen like that.
Will schizotypal have issues in like workplace or any other?
Yeah.
But they're just my understanding of how I learned about it was like the Harry Potter Luna. She's like the good example of that.
Hmm?
But she didn't have issues with like doing anything she had to do. She just had an odd eccentric way of thinking.
Yep. And then in that case, it's completely normal. We always have to make sure that that line is drawn when there's clinically significant distress or impairment. In the absence of that, the same bizarreness, the same eccentricities are completely normal. It's part of your personality. It's who you are. You're quirky, and nothing beyond that. Right?
Because I know during our like Seinfeld episode discussion when you were talking about Kramer, you were saying that he's also like schizotypal personality. So like comparing her to like that kind of like it's just different versions of the same.
Oh yeah, yeah. Right. You could even think of antisocial personality. It's not a single cookie cutter. And any personality. I mean, you could your best friend could be considered kind and altruistic, but there's different shapes and sizes. So too with the actual disorders, including schizotypal personality. Well, that's where the conversation starts. And then I always forget their names, but the two co-workers, same. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Again, remember though, and we probably should just end this part of the conversation with getting back to where we started, completely normal when culturally sanctioned. And there are people who do believe in this, and unless it's causing anybody distress or impairing their functioning, there's nothing wrong with it, and it's normal. And to the extent that Elise and others are making a living out of it and supporting themselves and everything, then there's nothing further to do from a psychiatry perspective other than talk about it, to teach. Final thoughts. Insidious. Okay, let's log off here. We are off next week. I'm at a conference. And how much longer do the clerks have on their rotation?
Fridays are shell.
Just like 2 days?
Yes.
Good luck. All right, I'll be in contact with Chris about the upcoming clerkship, but we'll be off next week, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. See everybody back then. And good luck in your non-psychiatry rotations. Try to have half as much fun.